You're Sterling,
Right,
and so you're Dorothy,
Dorothy.
and you're Corley,
Corley.
and you're Milton,
Right,
and you're the kid brother.
I am.
You were handing him cookies
I was
at the
handing,
last meeting, when I saw you. You were giving him a cookie, and I said, that's gotta be the big
He's
brother.
always
I
He shares the little bit.
think we have video of it.
oh, is that
Oh,
right?
yeah. So you were
But
getting him
he's
cookies.
not the big brother, he's the older brother.
Oh, I know. Big has lots of meat.
Well, do you do this every day?
joke that we heard about him?
No, our last that we did was 2 weeks ago,
Oh,
when I
yeah.
had Cox.
Oh, yeah.
The week before that, it was with Arnie
We
Murphy.
don't have a baby.
And then it hadn't been for a
Berkey,
while.
I remember Berkey, yeah, I
He
remember
lives,
that name.
he lives up on
Come
Market.
around.
Yeah.
And so it went, so yeah, we do a lot. But
Good.
it doesn't, it takes a long time. All the tapes have to be duplicated and then set up in a session so that they're organized, and then we can go on. We have to write you guys a thank you. I mean, it goes on.
But there's so many of you.
So.
We
what-
should have set this up by the mortuary.
Well,
Well, we'll talk about that. What we do is we record it, and as you're talking, I don't think there's gonna be any dead time to speak of with this many, but sometimes one-on-one, there is. I mean, you're just kind of like, okay, we sit down and you're thinking, and it's just dead time. We let the recorder run. It doesn't matter. Tape is cheap. And when you transcribe it, you don't say long pause, it just,
Yeah.
and we can edit out those. And so some people say, well, it's recording, I'm not saying anything. Well, it just recorded that. So don't worry. And if the phone rings, we'll stop it. If somebody comes to the door, we stop it. If you need a break for any reason, if you accidentally say something that you really wish you didn't say, we're not supposed to stop and re-record. We will. You're supposed to take it as it comes, the skeletons rattle, or you tell something on a neighbor or something that you really wish you hadn't said. Tell us right then, and we'll stop it and we'll back it off and re-record.
or later we can pull it out.
And the other thing is, if you decide tomorrow that you signed the release, well, that never happens. I'm telling you, we're a friendly crowd.
I don't think it's a problem.
No. We're a friendly crowd, so.
Yeah.
Kirkland, don't we?
Well, we might kind of interview my sister, because I don't know anything about any of it, other than recording. And there's a leader on the front, so you have to kind of let it go, otherwise you won't be able to sing. Okay, today is March 11th, 2007. We are with the brothers, Milton Sessions and Sterling Sessions, and with them are Milton's wife, Coralie, and Sterling's wife, Dorothy. I am Lolita Hawkinson. Dale Hawkinson is here as well. We are in Heritage Hall Resource Center.
Give the date.
I do.
Good.
What brought, you were born here, I'm assuming. What brought your parents to Kirkland?
I think our parents came because my dad's parents came over and opened a mortuary here. So Sessions Mortuary. And I
His
think
name was?
Elmer. And I think our dad and mom were living in Yakima. And they met there. And then when my dad moved over to be with his dad, he used to drive back and forth to Yakima on a 2-lane highway, and it took forever. And so they finally decided they better get married. And so they married and moved to Kirkland and moved into the house which we were born in.
And the address is?
327 6th Avenue.
Is
Is it still there?
It is.
Yes.
It's
I sold it and mom and dad were gone and so, we sold it. That was the only thing we had to sell, and so we divided the money between the 5 kids, and so we each got $700. We sold it for $3,500.
Didn't go very far, did it?
No.
But I lived in the house until I got married. I was born in it because there was no hospital, and I lived there until I got married. He got married before I did, so he left earlier.
Were you born in the house, Jared Sesh? Were you born also in the house?
Yeah. Well, I was born in November the 4th, 1920. 86.
Was there a doctor?
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I know
I
there
think
was.
so.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yes.
Do you know who?
Oh, I did know.
McKibben?
No, it wasn't McKibben. There were 2 doctors. McKibben was one of them, but it was the other one. Do you remember the doctors in Kirkland?
No. Doc Wall, and
No.
yeah, he was a dentist, but
You were grown up then.
no,
No, we had a doctor.
yeah.
And I've always said, in those days, doctors made house calls for the birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I had to deal with my dentist, that,
Oh, you know what? We haven't recorded one single thing because I didn't take enough pause.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. We're gonna start from scratch.
Oh.
Okay, Dr. Nelson. It isn't Dr. Nelson, it was Dr. He started, he built the
McKibben.
hospital. There was a doctor before, and he built the hospital.
I heard that too.
And I can't remember who it is. And I'm so sorry that I did this. This is like a pre-interview now. It is. And oh, no, we do have it because it's
It's
on,
live on mine.
it's live on his, because he's not on pause. I'm now on.
I don't think I'm.
It's okay, better now, better
What,
now than
Dr.
half hour.
McKibben?
No,
Okay.
McKibben was there. but
Yeah.
It wasn't Mother's Day.
No.
Okay, well, starting over again. This is March 11th, 2007. We're with the brothers Milton Session and Sterling Sessions. With them is Milton's wife, Coralie, and Sterling's wife, Dorothy. I am Louita Hawkinson, and with me is Gail Hawkinson. We're in Kirkland Heritage Resource Center. And we were taping, forgot to start the recording, so starting over again. We were talking about what brought the Sessions family, before these boys were born, what brought them to Kirkland.
And my mother and father were not married, both in the town of Yakima. And my father's father, Elmer Sessions, opened a mortuary in Kirkland. And my dad moved over from Yakima with him. And so then he used to drive back to see her on the narrow, long road from Kirkland to Yakima. It took hours because there was one lane each way, and if there was a truck in front of you, a milk truck, a hay truck, you were just stuck and had to crawl. And so it was such a miserable trip that they decided they'd get married earlier on. That kind of led them to the time they actually got married. They got married, they moved both to Kirkland, and moved into the house that Sterling and I were born in.
And the address is?
327 6th Avenue.
And you had a doctor at your birth, but it wasn't Dr. McKibben.
No, it wasn't Dr. McKibben when he was there. In fact,
And we should know, but it's just.
his daughter was in school with me all the way through, and Helena McKibben was her name. And, but he wasn't our doctor. Yeah, I can't think of the name of
When
the
they opened the first hospital, he was in that, wasn't he? The Kirkland Hospital?
I don't know.
There was a Dr. Taylor, but I think he came after
No,
Taylor.
darn.
We'll remember, or we do know, we can look it up, because he
Yeah.
built the hospital.
Well, I'm not sure that's the same, but you think it was the same doctor that built the hospital?
I think so.
I'm not
But
sure.
I'm not sure.
There were two doctors in town.
Yeah.
So your father moved to town, your father and mother moved to town when they were first married,
Yeah,
and all you children were born here.
yes,
There were 5 of you?
yes. Our older sister, Greta, is still alive in Seattle. She's not well, but she's still alive. And just last year, her husband died. But he wasn't from here.
What can you tell us about what your parents did
What they did?
for a living?
Well, Daddy, he had this grocery store, Milt brought the picture of that, but I think that was the first thing he did, wasn't it, Milt?
Yeah, it's the only thing I know.
Opened the
Well,
grocery store.
when we were young.
And what was the name, does it say groceries? Is that-
Yes, but I have another
Up on the
picture.
roof, it said,
I have another picture that says Sessions on the, here it is here.
Okay.
Nope, that isn't it.
We might have real pictures of this.
Here it is, here it is. You probably do. And it says Sessions right there.
Sure.
That's right.
Was
We
that
do have
Owen?
that picture.
Do you?
I brought it when we came before,
Yeah.
and I thought I took it home, but you know, I can't find those pictures that we brought. So we just brought a couple of these here.
well, this one.
Well, when you do locate them, give us a call.
Yeah,
We'd like
I
you to
will.
scan them and give them back to
Oh, Burke and Farrar there, that real estate, he was around here all our lifetime.
Sure was.
That, of course, is a ferry, Lincoln Ferry dock there.
In Lincoln or Washington.
them. If you all scan these.
Oh, I'm just doing a quickie here.
Oh.
This works.
Scan them.
Believe it or not, this works fairly good.
That's interesting. Great.
So your father had a grocery store.
Yeah, and then his dad, of course, is a mortuary, and then my uncle, Lawrence Sessions, he was an electrician, wasn't he, Mel?
Yeah.
Yeah, he worked as an electrician, and he ended up opening a store right across from where the theater was in that building there. And so, but it wasn't a success, never really got off the ground, I don't think.
I think Grandpa Sessions started him into 2 or 3 businesses, but he never made a go of it.
Sterling, when did your dad leave the grocery store and take the job in Seattle?
Well, I'm not sure that I remember exactly when he went to Seattle. He went to work, he'd catch the ferry in a streetcar, and he worked down on 4th and between Pike and Pine at Head Cigar
I
Store.
think it was Pike and Union.
Pike and Union, yeah. And so he worked there the rest of his life. He died, when did he die?
Died in January of '43.
Was it? Okay.
Women remember.
And he died, he was at work in the store when he died, and we got a
Well, he'd
phone.
gone up to pay his union dues, and he went into the restroom and died.
At the union office?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And, so, but then my uncle, he took over the mortuary when my grandfather died, and so then he was, worked that until about 1943, and then he went to work at Bowling, and I don't remember when he died.
now who'd they sell the mortuary to? Was it Clark?
Green's funeral home,
Was it
wasn't
to
it?
Greens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was.
Well, Greens started there and then they moved up on the other side of town.
Yeah.
Well, did your father sell a grocery store?
I don't think so.
I don't know,
It was during the Depression, probably. Was it during the Depression?
yeah,
And so did he just lose it or
I don't
give
know.
up on it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't either.
Did you fellas work in a grocery store?
Oh, no.
What do you remember about the grocery store? You were little pots when they,
I don't remember ever being there.
Oh, you remember
See,
that? In the grocery store?
Not daddy's. I ended up, I worked for Safeway and I worked for, what was the grocery store across the street from the theater on the corner there, right on the corner? What was the name of that little grocery store? It was just right at the curve on the, across from the theater. I worked there and,
But you were just a kid when
Oh,
you
yeah,
owned
I
this
was
other
just a-
store. Okay.
yeah, oh yeah.
No, but we never worked in our dad's store.
you never remember it. Do you
No.
remember it at all?
No.
No,
Not even a little bit?
Nothing about it.
Do you remember the cigar store?
Oh, yes, I remember that,
Oh,
and,
sure.
I,
The one in Seattle?
yeah,
It
yeah,
was called Head's Cigar Store.
yeah, yeah.
Did he own it?
No,
No.
no,
Work
no.
there?
No, he just worked in the cards, he had the card room, he worked that, he was, ran the card room, and, so, and then what he really died from was, the smoke, because he smoked continually, whether he's in working or not, and I'm sure that's why,
And also second-hand smoke.
yeah, so it was,
And he took the ferry,
yeah.
Yeah,
took the ferry every day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ferry and a streetcar.
And,
And it was a rail streetcar.
it was 15 cents on the ferry, wasn't it? And then
I don't-
5 cents on the streetcar.
Is that it?
I think so. But he never did own a car,
Never drove.
and never drove, and so we had to start, when we wanted a car, we had to buy our own and figure out how we were gonna pay for it, and I would pick him up. After I bought my first car, I'd pick him up down at the ferry every night, and he never did even buy me a gallon of gas.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny, the things that you remember? Isn't that
And a
funny?
gallon of gas was probably 10 cents.
Yeah.
Well, Sterling taught me how to drive, and I used to have to put gas in the car for him to teach me, and I used to put, and I used to put 10 cents worth of gas in for the lesson.
Well, was it worth it?
Oh, it was. Very professional.
And there's some stories in that too.
Yeah.
Well, how did you go about getting your first car?
Well, I mowed lawns, and I had the paper route, which that was written about us when we worked the paper route. But Bud Blau, he had they had a service station here on the corner. It was right next to Safeway, and his dad had the service station there, and so he had the Star route, and I worked the
Yeah, you should tell them the name of the paper was.
Seattle Star.
Oh,
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, and they came across from Seattle on the ferry, so we picked up our papers down there at the ferry every day. But I had a lot of jobs. I worked in the store, I had my paper out, I mowed the lawn at the mortuary, and I had a lot of mowed our school teacher. What was her name? It lived right on the other side of Central Grade School. And so I mowed her lawn. I had quite a few lawns to mow, so that's where I earned my money to get started. And so
how much did the car cost?
I think I paid $350 for it. I
That's
bought
a lot.
from Emil Hansen. You recognize that name? He had that
Hanson was on.
Hudson Terraplane and so forth. Well, I bought the car from who was the one that had the service station across the street. I bought it from
Well, that's
his
the one we read.
Emo's kid that had the service station right across the street from the Hudson Terraplane and so forth.
He was our landlord, he built the house that we lived in,
That we lived.
and yeah, I know that mom and my folks.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And what was the name of the gas station? That would be of interest. It was a different name that you would never hear today. Like Gilmore.
Was that the gas itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember that name of it.
That was a chain, wasn't it? Gilmore.
Yeah.
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 I vaguely remember something.
Roar with Gilmore.
That's good. I couldn't remember
You were the first roar.
So what year did you buy it? Do you remember?
Well, my aunt down in Oregon taught me how to drive, and so I got my license down there, and I was 15. I could get a license down there. So I bought the car. I don't think I was 16 yet. And there were only 3 kids in those days when I went to high school, Kirkland High School, that drove to school, and one of them lived in Juanita, and then one of them lived on, I don't know whether it was Mercer Island or down in that area. So just 3 of us now. Look at the cars that are around for the kids drive to high school.
That should have made you pretty popular.
Well, I didn't have time.
Unless you're
I
charged.
used to get out of school early. I didn't have to be in school till 3:30, and so I could go and get my paper out going and work that. But I walked my paper out or had my bicycle. And then when I started going with Dot, why she'd walk with me occasionally.
I'm 4 years younger, and when I went to high school, I rode my bicycle. I didn't have a car until much
And
later.
you never rode your bicycle to school?
Well, yes, I think I did. Yeah, I think I rode a bicycle to school.
You probably did too, you got the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but then I never did deliver the papers with a car. I used to go on, what was the guy we mentioned his name that lived right here on the water, that had the Times, the Seattle Times.
Escott.
Escott,
Yeah.
Roy
Roy
Escott.
Escott.
You're familiar with that name? Oh, well, he'd pick the papers up in Seattle, and then he'd drop papers off at Lake City and Juanita, and then he had his own route. Then after that, it covered Mercer Island. In fact, we delivered the papers to the Blethen out there, and then we delivered 5 papers a day because they had a chauffeur and they had a cook and they had really had everything. And so, but he had a big route and he delivered with a car, but I never delivered that one to Seattle.
But he had the biggest route on the east side. And I worked
We
for-
built it, we built it into the biggest one.
Yeah, he had his two brothers working for him.
Yeah, we have another brother, Gerard, and he lives in Oregon. And he just recently moved to a nursing home.
He's in between you two, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there was 2 years between each of us. And our older sister, she's 2 years older than Sterling.
Yeah, but there was another one
Well, she
between,
died,
Yeah.
one
Rita,
between
her
Rita-
younger
Rita.
sister, Rita.
no, between Greta and Sesh. There was
Yeah.
a child.
Oh, Reed.
Died in.
Green,
Died.
yeah.
Baby
Green.
Green.
Died, yeah, infant death,
Well, what kind of car? What year was your car and what kind was it?
Well, it was a little Plymouth, a 33 Plymouth, I think it was.
A coupe?
Yeah,
Little
a
coupe.
little two-door.
What color was it?
Huh?
What color was it?
I think it was kind of a red, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
See if we ever see it, it'll be black and white. We need to know these details. Okay, so we'd like to address the Sessions Funeral Home. And that was your grandfather.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about the Sessions Funeral Home? And does it look the same as it did then?
Well, yeah, I haven't been up there recently,
Well,
but
just not the landscaping, but the buildings are the same. And the city of Kirkland bought it originally and had their engineering offices in it when they built their new offices up where the grade school was. That's where the city
City
hall is now. And the mortuary was just a block from there. And they bought it and put their engineering offices in there. And then recently, more recently, a charity has been in there. I think Hope Link
That's right.
was in there. But memories of the funeral home, my dad never wanted to have anything to do with it. My uncle eventually took it over, but my
Now, what was
dad,
your uncle's name?
Lawrence,
Lawrence, okay.
yeah, and my dad's name was Manley.
But in those days, while my grandfather was still there, why, you put your caskets basically together. There was no padding or anything. The top wasn't on when they'd get them in that condition. And then they had room down in the basement to take and assemble those caskets. And but like Milt said, my dad, he didn't walk through. He'd go into the kitchen and the living room, and he had to go over to my uncle who lived next door, had the house right next to. Why, he'd walk outside and around. He didn't want to run into any corpses.
Funny he left Yakima and came to Kirkland when he wasn't interested in that.
Well, I don't know the details.
I have a funny story to tell about that hallway that he avoided, because the hallway came in from the parking lot, and it was a long, dark hallway, and on one side was just black curtains, and on the other side there was a display room for caskets. And so it wasn't, exactly exhilarating, but we kids, Sterling and my brother Jerry, and also our cousin Sonny, Lawrence's son, we were just kids. We would stand in that hallway and get behind the curtain. And when people would walk in from the parking lot going to the office, when they'd go by us, we'd go, woo, and push the curtains way out. And we got into trouble, but we had a lot of fun.
Were they actually scared of the people?
Yeah, oh yes. Scared them to death.
These were grief-stricken people, right?
Yeah, kind of took them out of the mood to buy a casket.
Well, the city still owns the building. What would you like to see happen to it?
That's interesting. The city does.
Mhm.
Doesn't
It's
matter to
empty.
me.
It's empty. Then you be quiet.
Would it make a memory of this Sessions mortuary out of it?
Who would care?
Well, I had thoughts of being a mortician because after I could drive and so forth, I thought, well, heck, I can drive the hearse and so forth. So I kind of thought that I might move into that position, but I went to work for Boeing and so.
Safeway.
Safeway and,
Yeah. Boy, well, how big is it? How big is that?
It was a fair-sized building. Hoagland has been in it.
Okay.
It was run over with rats, so hopefully.
That's right, they had to move from that location. I remember reading about it in the paper.
well, and they had a garage, they had a 3-car garage, didn't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think.
and then a full basement.
Yeah,
And
in the
that's where-
basement, you could enter the basements, you know, because they had to bring the caskets into the basement, and so there was a wide entrance for getting those caskets in.
I
They
have-
have an elevator or something?
Well, they did have
To
it,
bring
didn't
them
they have
up.
an
I
elevator?
don't remember, but I
How did
have,
they get them up into the above?
I don't remember.
Well, they had the mortuary, they actually did whatever cutting
Well,
or
that-
down.
I was gonna tell him, I remember a story, I asked my grandfather if he ever got scared. And he said one time, he had 2 narrow tables shoved together, and he had the body, and he was, rigor mortis sets in, and so you can't undress him or you can't dress him. So you have to cut the muscles so they can bend the joints. And he was cutting muscles on this body on the table, and he turned around to get a tool, and he hadn't noticed, but the 2 narrow tables had started to drift apart. And when he turned around to get a tool, the body dropped down between the tables, and the arms got on the tables. When he came back, the arms went up like that. He said that was the only time he ever got
I
scared.
never heard that.
I think it's a good story, don't you?
Well, he told it to me. That was the only time he ever got scared.
Yeah, he was 6'3", and he weighed 128 pounds.
Oh my goodness, he was thin.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
and then he wore a derby. Every time he went down to Kirkland, he'd walk down.
He was a giant in his day.
He
I
liked
think he
it,
was
yeah.
6'3" or 6'4". Just
Do you have photos of him?
I don't think.
I don't.
I don't.
Anybody?
Well, we'll talk to Greta and see if she's got
You
it.
should have talked to Greta, she probably has a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
If we could loan them to us.
Yeah.
They'll just scan,
Yeah.
we can make wonderful scans
Yeah.
today.
Sure.
And then we have the history.
You did call
Yeah.
Greta, that's right.
No, I called Greta because I couldn't find enough worthwhile to bring him. So I called Greta and I said, have you got any of the old pictures? And she said, I don't think so.
yeah. Well, we brought him that time we came here, and I took him home, and Corley and I looked for hours the last week.
We found lots of pictures.
Yeah, this is the Catholic church, which was across the street from where we lived. And when we were kids, I mean really kids,
This was on 6th.
yeah, it's torn down and there's an
Apartment house.
apartment house in there now.
We'll scan
We'll
those.
scan them.
Yeah.
Can we borrow these and return?
Sure. And this, you can't tell, this is from our backyard. That was a view of Kirkland and Lake Washington from our backyard,
Oh,
from
my
327 6th Avenue.
goodness.
And across the street was the church, and Corley and I were married in that church.
I was an old church.
Yeah.
Oh.
So was the priest.
Yeah.
That's
You want to scan them now, or do you want to scan them later?
I'll wait, otherwise the computer makes noise and it interferes with the recording.
So is that the same picture as that?
No, this is a different church, I just.
Well, it's in one church. Oh, yeah, certainly it is, yeah, that's the Holton church.
Well, in the church, I used to be the, I'd start the fire for mass on Sunday, and I had to cut the wood and you know, let the
How old are you?
furnace burnt, you know, the whole year round. I got $12 a year for cutting the wood and keeping the fire going and so forth, and so.
Now, did you think that was a good deal?
Well, that was $12.
How old were you, Sid?
I didn't know.
Gosh, I don't know, I went
Because I was
over
an
a
altar
few
boy,
times and
yeah.
helped him, but we used to have to go over at 4:30 in the morning to build the fire, and then by 8 o'clock mass, the temperature was just about right. And then by the 11 o'clock mass, they had opened all the doors and all the windows and.
You guys built good fires.
Yeah, well, I can't remember whether, because I was an altar boy there for quite a few years.
I was too.
So I must have built the fires before I was an altar boy.
Yeah.
I can't
Well, you were
remember.
16 when I met you and you weren't doing any of that, except you were, is it an altar boy when you helped? Yeah, you were still
Yeah.
an altar boy
Was Father Ryan there then?
Yeah, yeah. And then all of the boys that were becoming a priest that went to, over there by Kenmore,
Yeah, St. Edward's.
St. Edward Seminary. There was no, you know, there was no churches around. People from Bothell came over here
Yeah,
and everything.
yeah.
And so they would come over and we'd play baseball and so forth out on the street out there on 6th. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with them. Father never played.
No.
But the kids, the young priests are studying to be priests came over. But cars across the street from where you guys are living, and Willie Green had a house that was, it was this side of cars. They lived, I think, probably a block up further, didn't they?
Yeah.
Than where Willie Green was.
Yeah.
Ninth Avenue.
Yeah.
So Green lived where?
Well, he lived right down closer to 6th. He was
No.
on
He was
7th was the next street.
Yeah, he
and
was
then
about 8.
Between 7th and 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so his dad was a carpenter, and so he would make our sleds for us, and we could slide down 3rd there, and of course the cars going up, why we could get on the sled and grab the bumper and you know, ride up. But Willie Green, and he's still around, I think he lives in Bellevue there, right, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's pretty incapacitated, but he.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, we got along good.
Well, did Third Street go all the way through?
No,
Went
no,
down to Central.
well, but it didn't.
Okay,
it
stop.
didn't-
now. Stop, wait, we're out of,
We're out of.
Oh,
And she does an introduction for the next side, so.
oh, yeah.
Okay, now, this is side 2, and it is March 11th, 2007, and we are with the Session families.
Well, Milt ended up buying a piece of property there on, where 6th goes down the hill, and you were right on there between 6th and 7th where you bought that property, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but she's talking about Third and.
Yeah, and on the 3rd though, for most of our lifetime, that road didn't go down there to below.
Well, you're talking about Sixth, she's talking about Third.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, Third Street, did it always go down to
Central,
Central?
Yeah.
It always went through Central.
always,
Yeah.
yes.
But 6th Street did not.
Oh, no, so we lived, Sixth Avenue, and,
Okay, Sixth Avenue.
yeah, and, there was, well, you could drive in off of Third about a half a block, and then it wasn't even a real street up in front of our house, which we were in the middle of the block, and we didn't have a regular street up there, and it ended just being, we had another house east of ours that had used the same rough roads that we did, but it ended right there. That was the end of
Okay,
Sixth.
that was Sixth Avenue, that
Yes.
ended.
Right, it didn't go over to Fourth Street. It
Okay.
ended right.
Yeah.
And
Okay, was there a creek that went down there?
well, there's a creek on
Creek?
Central.
Central Japs Creek,
Why is it named, spell it for me,
Japs.
why is it called Japs Creek?
I don't
Because
know.
there was Japanese living there at a nursery. Wasn't it a nursery that,
Flowers and things.
in plants? Yeah, and they were Japanese. And I don't know if it was named after them or not, but it was always Japs Creek. And it came down right alongside of Central. And in fact, when we used to sled down Third Street, we would have to be careful because once in a while, we would cross Central and end up in Japs Creek.
Now, where is Japs Creek? I mean, where was it? It's probably still.
It was
there.
on the
South side,
south
side
side.
of Central.
Central.
Side.
Yeah.
So you cross Central and you'd end up in the creek.
Yeah, and the creek was open all the way down to town. And then right, the main street of town, it went under the buildings and over and came out in the lake right by the ferry dock.
Do you know where it was that it went under?
Yeah,
Oh,
Whereabouts?
see, I'm thinking of the penny store and
yeah, it was just north of the penny store.
Yeah, didn't it go through the park, and that was kind of park, or maybe it became park later on, but there was that park grounds right there to the shore.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
he's talking about up on the main street of Kirkland,
Where it actually.
where it
Oh.
actually went under the buildings,
Oh, yeah.
the stores.
Okay.
But it was,
I never knew that.
it was north of Penny's, you know, a half a block south of Central,
And it went under and then into the
Yeah.
lake.
end of the lake, yeah.
Did it ever flood up into
No,
there?
No,
no.
I never had any problem with it.
Because it used to flood up there before they lowered the lake. And that's probably where the water came up from. It would go into Lee Johnson Field and flood that area.
Oh, way back, before they lowered the lake,
Yeah.
before the ferry dock
Before
was
you were
put
here.
in there,
Oh.
yeah. But, the grounds which are a park now, where the Japs Creek used to come out, it's buried and runs out into the lake now. But that was all rough weeds and
Oh, yeah.
blackberry bushes and in fact, you know, right downtown like that. I can remember one time we were on the ferry dock and some of our friends were skinny dipping over in that same area.
Give us names.
Well, but we used to, I don't remember
Alcohol
whether
sessions.
Milt did or not, but we used to go down to the ferry and penny nickel dime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I
and
remember that.
then we'd jump in to catch the pennies.
Yeah,
or
the
whatever
people up
they
on the
throw.
ferry, waiting for the ferry to go out, would throw coins into the water when we yelled penny, nickel, dime, get it every time. And we would stand on the pilings and on the dock there and they'd throw them in the water
And
and,
just jump in.
yeah, lots of times they
Oh,
were pennies.
yeah.
Sometimes we got a dime or maybe even once in a while we got a quarter,
How old were we when we were doing that?
about 10.
I can't remember.
And was that okay to do?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Oh.
My mom could go out on the back porch of our house up
About
there.
where this picture was
And
taken from.
Holler down, because I sold papers on the corner on Saturdays of the ferry dock there. And so she'd holler down for me to come home or
Yeah, if we weren't in a store downtown, she could holler and she had a terrific voice. And she could call us home.
Well, it was quiet.
Yeah,
There
there,
were
yeah.
cars, there wasn't noise.
There weren't a lot of automobiles running around.
Amazing.
Do you remember anything about the Todd murder? Do you remember Louis Todd?
No,
As the person, do you remember anything about the Todd murder?
no.
No, I don't.
What was it? You never anything about what?
Todd. And Mr. Lloyd
Todd.
shot and killed Mr.
Oh,
Louis Todd. He had Todd Beads.
Todd Feeds, that has a ring to it.
Todd, what?
Todd Feeds, feed store.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Ah,
The Todd's Feed Store was on Central, right about where that gas station was on the corner of Central and,
yeah,
and,
yeah. Yeah, but I don't remember any murder.
I don't even,
What years were those?
It's like 1931 perhaps. Maybe you were too young.
Oh, well,
Remember that?
31.
You would have
I would have been 9 years old,
Yeah.
You were born in,
and 20,
Yeah.
11
must not have
No,
been sensational.
doesn't ring any bells.
Did you ever go to Juanita?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah, that
Where
picture.
was the Langdon store?
The
You know,
what?
Langdon store, the Harry Langdon grocery store, you know that?
No.
Do you remember, Mel?
I remember Forbes, they had the best place to go swimming down there, Forbes. And they also were Catholics, and so we knew them well. And I used to walk down, I forget who I went with, but you know, there was a liquor deal down there. And so we'd go down there and collect bottles because the people were on the beaches and so forth. We'd go and collect bottles and then take them across the street there, across the highway, and sell them to the, you know, whether either bootlegger or what. But anyway, we'd get, you know, a few cents for the bottles. And I don't remember any.
This is where we used to swim.
Is that?
That was in 1930.
Well, that's Juanita Beach. That
Juanita
was,
Beach.
yeah, that was Ford.
Forbes had one,
Yeah.
Section
And then the
of
one
it.
on this side of it, or next to the
Yeah.
highway, why then that was what do we call that?
Juanita Beach.
No, well, but there was a name for that property there. That
I
was.
don't
Well,
remember.
there was a Shady.
Shady Beach,
Shady.
that was it.
Oh, that one, no, Shady was on the other side of
Yeah,
Ford.
yeah, and that's
Uh,
what,
Yeah, it wasn't.
that was open, that was free to the public. Forbes was.
Charged.
They owned the property and they charged.
Well, they had the dock and
Yeah.
area, but yeah, Shady Beach was on the other side of Forbes. I can't think of that one that was on between the highway and Forbes.
I can't even-
And
Somebody else coming along, remember?
yeah,
Did you ever go down the slide, the big,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sure,
yeah,
yeah.
it's it was a good place to go swimming, but it was quite a ways to walk. You know, it was about 2 miles, I think.
From where you
wasn't it?
live,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have some,
Yeah.
probably in your pictures, we have
Right.
pictures of your family, your mom, and I don't know if it was your dad.
Yeah, my
But your
dad.
little kids
Yeah.
standing in the water.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Shady
it
Beach.
was stir- Yeah, I got, it was in the
Old-fashioned bathing
pictures.
suit, you know.
Well, and who was it that built the golf course right before you get to the
It was called the Juanita Golf Course.
yeah, who
Was that Farrar?
That was, yeah, that was Farrar.
Farrar,
Yeah.
the real estate man,
Yeah.
Farrar, had, there was a 9-hole golf course. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's where I learned to play
You
golf.
probably know more than you guys.
That's where I learned to play golf, was the Juanita Golf
That was
I did.
Rose
I never
Point.
learned.
Course. Pardon me?
Rose Point.
Rose Point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna try to buy my first piece of property. There was a piece of waterfront that, people had a house on it, and, gee, I forget, I think it was around $15,000, but I never did buy it.
It's pays money for a paper boy. I remember that, so it must have been, we must have been going together then.
How much did it, when you were at Forbes Beach, how much did he charge?
Well, as I remember, it was really expensive, but I think it was probably around 25 cents.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
How much did it cost to go to a movie?
Well, the deal there, we had a Pal night was Wednesday night, and so the people, we'd line up, and the people that were paying the 15 cents, why, they could take somebody with them, and so we'd always go to the show on Wednesday night, because it was free, basically, but it was 15 cents.
Yeah, there was another time too that if two were going in and paying, they could take a third free, and we would stand around and try to be the third too.
Oh, I didn't remember that. That was maybe after my time.
Yeah, but you could have 15 cents, you know, for a movie, and you could get a hamburger for 10 cents.
That's right.
And you could have a great night out for 25 cents.
So 25 cents just to go swimming, that was quite a,
Well,
That's
yeah,
handy.
it was, yeah.
Well, yeah, some of us kids would go down to First Avenue, because you could go to the movie down there for 10 cents.
Yeah.
And then you could get a hamburger there on Pike, and so we'd go to the movie and go up there and have our hamburger and then catch the streetcar. Who was that? First name was Don. Don Kay. Don Kay.
What about him?
Well, he was one of the kids that would go with us when we'd go down there.
I remember our dad would take us, not very often, but we would go in and movies were 10 cents, and we would see 2 or 3 movies in one day, going around to the different theaters. And boy, was that a thrill
Well, you could stay right in the same theater and see two.
today.
That's right, because you have
Well,
double
back then.
feature. You
Yeah,
have
they had
double
double
features.
Oh, double features,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
newsreels.
So we went to 3 different buildings.
How funny.
You interviewed Martha Burr,
yeah.
Martha Millar.
Yeah.
Yeah. In high school, I was president of Kirkland High School, and she was my secretary.
She talks about that.
Did she?
What did she have to say?
Yeah.
Oh, but didn't they have a telephone
The
company?
Burrs, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you
Her
work?
sister was my friend.
Oh,
Mary Burr was my friend. We went to school together. Yeah, and I was a telephone operator.
Oh, were you?
At the Burr, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
That's what he had.
And that was back when you would pick up the phone and the operator would
Plug in.
and ask you what number you wanted, and
Yeah.
she would plug it in.
Yeah. And it's real.
Yeah, but it was what, $1 a month? What was
A
it?
telephone?
I
Telephone.
don't know. The funeral home number was black 91, and our home phone number was red 491.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to ask about the card room that your father ran. What is a card room and is it legal today?
Oh, I think they still have card rooms, yeah.
They
Is that
played,
gambling or?
they played
Yeah.
poker,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
It wasn't against the law then.
No,
No,
no.
I realize that.
And he managed the whole card room, which had probably, 6 or 8 tables.
So it's like the professional poker of today? Was it just poker that they played or what they play?
I don't really
I
know.
don't know, yeah, we were too young.
Did he enjoy it?
Did he? Well, yeah, I think that he liked it, and
Did
he
it
had,
for
he had
years.
5 kids, and he got $5 a day. And so when I had an opportunity to go to work at Boeing as I was cashing their Boeing checks, and I figured I'd get out of Safeway and go to work for Boeing. And when I went down and I was gonna make $5 a day, I thought, holy smoke, here's my dad with a whole family for $5 a day, and so I took it right now. No.
Well, I think there was one time he made less than $100 a month and had 5 kids. I have one story about the card room. You know, he being in charge when guys at his table would, you know, ask for a cigarette. And it got quite expensive digging out, so he started smoking Bull Durham.
Rolling his
And he
own.
rolled his own cigarettes. So when they would ask him for a cigarette, he'd pull out a package of Bull Durham and they'd say, no thanks. So he saved a lot of money that way.
Well, I thought he went to Bull Durham when he was trying to quit. You know, he wanted to quit cigarettes, and so then he'd go from cigarettes to cigars, and then to Bull Durham. And before he got really into Bull Durham too far away, he was back smoking TaylorMade. So he never did quit.
Can you tell anything that you remember about the parades and the festivals, the pig races, anything like that?
How about the first time I ever went to that strawberry festival, I thought that was quite a thing. Lots of free strawberries. Well, I don't know, it was in Kirkland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
downtown Kirkland.
Yeah.
They had a strawberry festival every year.
Mhm. Lots of good strawberries and, you know, kids, I remember your young cousin, he could play a musical instrument and he was part of the entertainment, Sonny. Oh, I don't know, it's a long time ago.
Well,
It was in downtown Kirkland, you know, on the street.
This is the telephone company building.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
This is the telephone company building
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
where Burr's,
Well, that was right
yeah,
down here on the corner.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
still there,
right
yeah.
down on the
And
corner.
their
Right
home,
across
their
this-
home right from
It's
William
still
Park.
there.
Yeah.
The Burr home is still here too. Very, very
The
nice.
phone company is gone, but the Burr home is.
yeah.
Well, now the Phil Marsh that built down there, what do you call that, next little town that was, you know,
South Kirkland.
well, it was on the other side. It was
Houghton.
Yeah, well, Phil Marsh, now he lived right by the mortuary. He was just 2 houses from the mortuary on the same side of the street and everything. He looked right down Central Avenue, you know. That was Phil Marsh, and then his brother was Louis Marsh, and they were both at Boeing. And Louis Marsh built that brick home, and I remember that was $27,000 when he built that brick home. And of course, he owned the property on the other side, clear to the water, which he gave to the thing. But Phil Marsh Jr., we used to play soccer up there at the play field, you know, because he was just a little stone's throw from his house. And so we'd play soccer and so forth. Well, he just died the other day. Oh.
You see, when I met my wife, she was with Phil Marsh down at Waverly Park, North Kirkland. And I thought she was going with him, and I was with Martha Burr. And she thought I was going with Martha Burr. But we
You
were
were both
just,
were attracted to each other right then the first time?
Not right away.
no. But I tried to catch her at the tennis courts right out here. I called her home the next day and her mother said, they're up playing tennis at the high school. So I came over to the high school to try to catch her and nobody was there. So I gave up and I went back down to go swimming. And I was gonna back into the parking lot spot at the Waverly Park. And here sitting on the curb was Coralie and her girlfriend, not Phil. when her mother said they are playing, I thought she meant Phil and Coralie, but it was her girlfriend Wimp.
Yeah, Wimpy,
And it
that
was-
is silly name.
yeah, but when I looked in my rear view mirror, when I was backing into this slot, there was Coralie and Wimpy.
No.
But you know, you're talking about swimming, this road went right down to the old woolen mills, right? Well, of course, that's
This
what,
road down here.
no, it'd be down here, wouldn't it? This was
Where's
the
the
street
lake?
that went,
Where's the lake? Right, see, that's the
Yeah.
lake.
and it was that
Go
road.
this way.
That would go up the hill, out here.
What the hell, that's up the hill there.
This goes right along, we drove down there.
Where Dr.
That's where we,
Yeah,
we-
yeah,
right down there.
Yeah, and, but the woolen mills were right down there on the
Further
water.
down further.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you pointing over here.
No, boys.
But we, you know, we didn't have any adults around and we were just all kids, but that's where we went swimming. And then, our sister, this was in 1940, well, when did Sand Point,
That was during the war.
well, but Sand Point was there, right? Been there for many
Oh,
years.
yeah,
yeah.
They had
Yeah,
an
Sand
airport,
Point,
the
yeah.
military had an airport there. Well, pardon. She and another friend swam over to Sand Point, and the guy that was guarding Sand Point, he wouldn't let them come in even close enough to rest, so they had to turn around and swim back to
They were
The
just
woolen mill.
15, 16 years old, I think.
I know.
Had to
Well, it
be.
was
Yeah,
during the
yeah,
war,
yeah.
But the Woolen Mills was the main swimming beach right here in Kirkland. They had piling out there from the old woolen mills. There was a Kirkland Woolen Mills at one time, and it was built out over the water. And when they tore down the woolen mills, the piling, oh, thank you. When they tore down the woolen mills, the piling was still there, and that's where we swam. That was our main swimming beach. Of course, we went down to South Kirkland too, which was this side of Marsh's property. There's a South Kirkland dock, it's still there. And that's where we swam a lot too.
You know, Phil Marsh was in Materiel for Boeing, and Louis was an engineer. I don't know where they got their money, but they were always considered the richest people on here.
They were. I think that's why Coralie was attracted.
You know, he just passed away.
Yeah.
That's right. I apologize.
Oh, sure you do. Sure you do. Can you tell us what you remember about Pearl Harbor? That Sunday. All four of you.
We went out to Molly and George's for dinner.
Did we?
That's all we talked about, of course. We're wondering what was gonna happen. How would it affect you kids, you know? Because you're prime age.
I was playing out in the street at home when we heard it, and I can remember saying, "Oh, we'll just go over there and bomb them all out, and it'll be over with." That's what I thought. I was
How old were
pretty,
you then?
let's see, 41.
December?
Yeah, okay. I was born in
Teens.
June of 24, so 44 would have been 20, and so.
We need our calculators.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 3 years. I was 17.
17, and you were 21.
So I thought you were not 21 now.
But
Right.
I just
Prime
thought,
age.
guys, we'll just go over there and bomb them, and that'll be the end of it. I ended up on a heavy cruiser over there still fighting them.
You finished high school?
Yes.
first before you went to the CERTS?
Yeah, well, yes, no, I started at university. When I was going to university, I rode my bicycle down to the ferry, took the ferry over to Madison Park. Well, in fact, I would go on the ferry and go up in the captain's cabin, and he'd take it away from the dock, and then I would steer it across Lake Washington, and then he would make the landing, and I would pedal on over to the U. So I was
Oh, I
going
imagine
to the
doing that
U.
today.
I joined the Naval ROTC at the University of Washington. And so I was in the Naval ROTC and then commissioned and then went out on a heavy cruiser.
What was the cruiser name?
It was a Portland, CA-33, named after Portland, Maine.
Oh, okay.
And so when the war ended, we had to go down through the Panama Canal, up, and we had Liberty in New York first because the ship hadn't been alongside a dock for 11 months. So they wanted to have the sailors to get some free time before they took them up to Portland, Maine. And so we had Liberty in New York City, and then went up to Portland, Maine for Navy Day. And we marched through town in Portland, Maine on Navy Day.
Well, you liked all your years of the Navy.
Oh yeah, I stayed in the Navy Reserve. I was in the Submarine Reserve for 25 years
Really?
after the war.
Why were you in the submarine? Why did you select that?
Well, when I was in the Naval ROTC, our captain who was in charge of the Naval ROTC was an ex-submariner. And so we heard about submarines all the time I was going in the Naval ROTC. So when the war was over, there were about 5 of us that, from the Naval ROTC that joined the Submarine Reserve. We had a submarine over in Lake Union that we dribbled on every Wednesday night,
And what was
the
its name?
Puffer.
Yeah, the Puffer.
Puffer. But then we started flying out of Sand Point up to Port
Port Angeles.
Angeles. They had, out on the end of the spit there, they had a small airport, and we used to fly up there and then go aboard. They had an operating submarine that was operating in Puget Sound. They'd come alongside the dock, and half of their crew would go on Liberty, and we would, our Naval Reserve crew would take over, and we'd operate the submarine for the weekend, come back in, their crew would come back on, and then we'd fly back to San Point. We did that once a month.
And that's how you got certified and got your dolphins? in?
Yes, exactly, you know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to take a 2-week cruise every year, and it was on cruise that we got our dolphins. But we had to go through the diving tank, 100-foot tank of water, make a free surface. We did that in Hawaii, and otherwise we had to go back to Connecticut. But we used to go to our submarine training crews were in San Diego most of the time, but a couple of times we went to San Francisco, and a couple of times we went to Hawaii.
Memories. You know, there was a shipyard on Lake Washington. And you worked there a little bit, but what was it before it became?
It was a shipyard. It was a private
Okay.
building,
Okay.
small ships. And then when the war came on, why they enlarged it and built the
Right.
boats, yeah.
I worked there. I got out of high school and went down and worked at Houghton Shipyards for the summer. And then I went to school at the university. And at the university, I was going to take electrical engineering. But you know, the first year, especially the first quarter, it's just general stuff. But my goal was eventually to get to electrical engineering. Well, when we had a 2-week vacation in 1942, the war was pretty young, I went back down to the shipyards, and they hired me on as a journeyman electrician because I was taking electrical engineering at the University of Washington. I got 70 cents an hour when I started, and when I came back as a journeyman electrician, I got $1.20 for 2 weeks. And then I went back to the U, and then that was the end of any. We right straight summer, winter we stayed in studies to commission and then went overseas.
Well, this must be why you're so good at working in jails
Oh.
now.
I'm in prison industry. We could talk for a couple hours.
Yeah,
about
we
that.
don't want to do that. We're not going there.
Oh, just, okay, we are,
No more talking now.
Hey, we've been
Choose
here
that over.
we've been here 2 hours.
no, 1 hour, half hour per side.
Oh, that's right.
No,
Yeah.
but Martha gave us 3.5 hours.
Oh, that'd be.
Well, but, you know, she would have a lot of
And
memories.
who, Arnold,
Only 3 hours.
Did you work with the phone company when
You
she
know,
did?
Arnold who?
Orange
No,
Parky.
well, I don't
Berkey.
know, but she
Berkey.
was, she
Oh,
milled a
you,
little bit.
yeah.
Milt graduated in
But I
42
don't
from
think
high
I've ever
school. I
seen him,
graduated in 48.
So she was
Since,
probably married by that time.
Since we left
You know,
Kirkland.
I
Does he
don't
still
know.
live here?
Somebody didn't know Martha. See, I married
Is that
her
right?
sister, younger
This
sister,
is,
was my friend.
this is side
And so I
3.
knew Martha because she was older. Of
This
course,
is
I
side
always
3,
knew her
where
as a
March
person.
11th, 2007, we're talking with the Sessions family. And we're having a good time. They, we were talking about, well, the prison, that, to find out that we're doing
hey,
prison
but,
mi-
hey.
ministry takes away all the fun out of that, so we're
Oh.
taking right over that.
Yeah,
Let him tell you about his, how far he went at bowling
Yes,
and how
that-
long he was there.
Yes, we want to know what you did for military and carry on. Do what he just did.
Hmm. Well, I said that I thought that the pay was so much better for Boeing than working for Safeway. And even though I'd gotten out of high school 6 months early because the Safeway superintendent called the superintendent of schools to see if I could get out in January of '39, and they had a full-time job, so school let me go. And then when I was cashing checks for Boeing people, why, man, I was making, for working for Safeway for a 6-day work week, I made $18.50 or something for a 6-day work week. And so when the Boeing checks were being, I was cashing them, my $5 a day was about, that was a starting wage. So that's where I decided I would go. And so I put in my application and I got started at $5 a day, and after I was there, I was running a vacuum cleaner on the B-17s is what I hired in my first job. And so I had made up my mind that I'm going to be a manager here before I'm 21. And so that worked out fine. I made first line supervisor by the time I was 21. And I retired in 1986 as vice president of operations, and had worked there for 47 years. But I wanted to work till I was 50, had 50 years in, and so my boss says, well, I said, that's no problem, we'll take it to the board of directors, and I'll work that. And so,
That was longer than anybody had ever worked there before.
longest time of the work coming, and so he come back from the board of directors, and the board of directors said, no way, those are the rules, no exceptions, he's gotta go. So I had to go. So when Stonesider were here, just not too long ago, he was president, and he got a year's, so I called my boss, who was still alive at that time, and said, boy, you can tell who's running that damn thing. And so, but I couldn't get.
But he was vice president of operations in Everett and in Renton, and also the
Minuteman program, the missiles.
missiles over in Montana. And then also the ships,
Oh, the,
yeah.
yeah, the foil,
hydrofoil.
hydrofoil,
yeah.
yeah.
He was in charge of the production on all of
Well,
Impressive.
I don't think I can say anything more. It was a good life, you know.
Did you go into the military?
Oh, yeah, I was drafted after the war because I was 4F, and so I had to go in, and so I went in down at Fort Lewis, and they decided
those.
since,
No, it says leave that alone.
since I was, since I only had one eye, why, they decided that I could be a pharmacist. So they sent me to school and became a pharmacist, and so I was aboard an Army transport, and so we were headed for France, and then they changed it no, that we were to go and pick up a team that was leaving New Orleans and going down south, and so we were to pick them up, and then we'd head on to France. So we never left New Orleans, and so I was in the military for 11 months aboard an Army transport.
He's got some pictures of bowling if that would be of any interest.
This is Kirkland.
You want it again?
Well, right now,
What do you
we'd
got,
like to
would
keep
you?
going. Well, we'll do that a little later.
Oh, okay.
I do the wartime. You were all here during the wartime. Were there blackouts in Kirkland?
Remember,
I don't
like
think, I don't remember blackouts.
Well, I wasn't here, I was in,
You were in. So, like Juanita, were there any?
I lived in the Houghton area,
Houghton
well, where
area.
the shipyard was, but I do not remember blackouts.
But at Plant Two, was that Plant Two at Boeing where they built that
Oh,
city up on top of the,
Yeah.
Camouflage.
yeah, that was the only thing I think I can remember.
Was it a nervous time in Kirkland during that time?
Yeah.
You know, when you're young, you don't get all wrapped up in something. Nowadays, it would be.
How about the Japanese internment?
Well, that was sad.
Did people
We
talk
all,
about
we
that?
all had friends who were Japanese, didn't you?
I didn't have any friends that were
We had, went to
Japanese.
school with them at the high school, Kirkland High School. They were nice kids. It made me very sad.
How did the school address it when they left? Did they?
Well, I was out of school at that
Okay.
time, yeah. But, I don't know how they did it.
Did people talk about it? Non-Japanese, that is.
I don't think everybody felt kindly toward them. If you knew them, like we had gone to school together and we were friends, you know, you felt different. But if they were just some people that were living there, like my aunt and uncle stopped at this little vegetable store on their way home from work. They would buy their groceries there, and they liked them. They thought they were nice, but they didn't seem to care when they were taken away. So I don't know. It's different when you're at war, of course, you think of things differently.
you never knew if they might have connections, and so you just wanted to play it safe.
Okay, I've enjoyed having wives here. You are both natives, so I'm gonna address both of you separately, so you can tell your family history.
Okay.
So, Dorothy, were you born here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is your family name?
Conahan.
Dorothy Conahan. And what brought your parents here and when?
Well, my mother was one of 8 children, and my grandmother lived in Georgetown. And I don't know when she came here. She was born in Paris, and she came to the United States when she was 2, and they lived for a while in Minnesota, and then they ended up in Kirkland. Not Kirkland, but in Georgetown.
Georgetown,
Mhm.
Seattle.
And she had 8 children. My mother was the 4th one, so the kids all had to work. And my mother went to work at Boeing's too. She was 15 and her best friend was 16. So they both went down to get a job, and the 16-year-old went first and got the job. And mother found out at that point that you had to be 16 to be hired. So when she got up there, she told them she was 16, so she got a job too.
And they just believed you.
She worked at Boeing's for a couple of years, I think. And then she got married when she was 18 or 19.
And she lived in Georgetown
She
still.
lived in Georgetown, yeah. She, grandma had her house and mom's was over a little ways further, and when mother was raising me, she was very young herself, if she had trouble, if I was yelling and crying, she couldn't make me stop, she'd make a signal on the back door so grandma could see it and come over, because grandma had 8 kids, so she knew what to do. And then, when I was about 3, we moved to Spokane, and we lived in Spokane for 12 years, and then came back to Seattle.
Well, tell her about your mother falling when she was working at Boeing.
Oh, yeah. God, I can't remember. She
She
fell into one of
They
the,
built the wings on the airplane, you know, and they were building the airplane. And I don't know exactly what her job was, but anyway, she fell through the fabric, you know, it was fabric on the wings, and she fell through that, and so they fired her.
oh, no, the boss said, when he found out what happened, he said, all right, Mary, you can go home. Oh, so what, she went home. The next day she came back, she didn't know she was fired.
Oh my gosh, oh my.
And he said, all right, as long as you're here, you can stay.
So she got to keep her job.
Yeah.
What a blessing.
Well, that wouldn't happen today.
Mm.
Things were a lot nicer in lots of ways.
She
Yeah.
had Moxie. Kept him in line, but you got that same too.
Moxie was a part of Yakima where my mother lived before she came to Kirkland.
What
Well,
was-
Moxie City, they call
Moxie
it,
City, yeah.
in Yakima.
And that's where this, that's where a teacher lived, isn't it? That bought your, what you were talking about earlier.
Oh,
About the newspaper or something, yeah.
yeah.
So when did you move to Kirkland?
We lived in Spokane, and it was 1937, I guess it was. And we moved to Seattle for a couple months, and then we moved to Kirkland, and so it was 1937. And my mother had remarried, and he was an insurance salesman, so we only lived in Kirkland 2 years, I think, and then we moved back to Seattle.
How'd you find him?
Well, my dad was the insurance man in Kirkland, and he'd met this young girl, and he said, she's so nice, and he says, I told her that we're gonna be moving over there, and she said she's gonna help you get acquainted and meet some people. This was Mary, what's her last name?
Jewel.
Mary Jewel. Have you done any of the Jewels?
I think we have.
Have you?
Someone has.
Uh-huh.
We have.
Oh, well anyhow, so she introduced me to Sesh. That was that.
And he had a car.
Hmm? And he had a car, yeah. And that's where it got started.
Can I inject a little
Oh, by all
story?
means. I'm not taking it out if you change
They
your
were,
mind.
they were going together and had a car, and I snuck into the back seat down on the floor, and they drove down to the Kirkland Bowling Mills, the swimming beach down there, at night, and I was in the back seat, and they started getting friendly, and then he wanted to shove the seat back. And he reached back there, and there was a spare tire back there too, and me.
Must have been crowded.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was getting squeezed, so I made a noise so they found out I was there. And I got to walk home.
I'm glad you didn't get drowned.
Could have. Yeah, he was my big brother then.
And
Yeah,
your future,
he's-
and your future sister-in-law.
Yeah,
Golly.
Yeah, well, he he liked to drive my car, and so I got,
They could afford it.
I got a new car later on, I forget what year it was,
that was in
41.
it was in 41 you bought a 42.
And so he was using it that night.
I took, we were going to a high school ice skating party out at Vasa Park. You know where Vasa Park
Lake Sammamish.
Lake Sammamish. And on the way back, we were sitting, you wanna tell it?
No, go ahead, you're doing good.
I had 4 or 5 kids in my car, and we started heading home, and this other kid in another car kind of acted up, and so I speeded up a little, and come to the first corner, and I was over the center line, and a car coming the other way, I clipped it.
And he had to cross that.
1942
A new
Pontiac
Yeah,
Was it
yeah,
Pontiac?
I think.
in 1941.
So how did you tell?
October the 6th, 1941.
He's never
And
forgotten it.
the car, of course, was, I don't know how badly damaged it was, but, and we had to drive this old dumpy thing that didn't even have any floor in the back seat, and, because I don't know, were they gonna fix the car or what? But anyhow, you ordered a new car, and we got it on December 31st, 1941. And that was the last day you could get a new car, because of the war.
So what became of the other car?
I probably jumped it, I don't know.
You could afford
I think
to
I
jump
sure-
a car?
Oh, no,
No,
he got
insurance.
no, he got
I had
insurance.
insurance.
Yeah.
They called it total. They,
Well, that had to be quite an accident.
well,
Sounds like today. And it's funny now, but you were devastated, I think.
oh, boy.
Not nearly as much as he was.
Well, can he borrow your car today? Did you
Well,
forgive
he
him?
has 4 or 5.
I have to.
So, Dorothy, what did you do? Did you ever have a job, little job in Kirkland? Or
No, when we graduated, I graduated from Kirkland High School, and I was 17. My mother said I'm just too young to work. She didn't want me to work. So that Christmas, I was still 17, but I did get a job at Sears and Roebuck's in Seattle. That was just for Christmas. I got laid off right after Christmas. But then I got hired back again in the summertime. So I worked there a couple of years. Then I went into a bank. I started working in a bank. And then when we got married in 43, Sedge thought that I should work at Boeing's because the pay was so much better. And I wasn't too crazy about that idea, because I liked my job at the bank. But I did go to work at Boeing's, and I wasn't very nice. I took off. I was absent a lot of the time, because I didn't want to go to work. So after a year, I quit. That was the end. I thought that would be the end of my career, and it was for a while. And then he had to go in the service, and so I got a job in a bank. And then I joined him in New Orleans, and we came home.
Okay, so your parents, see if I can catch this. Your parents eventually moved to Kirkland? Did
No,
stay?
no, they-
They never moved to Kirkland?
We moved to Kirkland for
Just
just
a
2
short
years,
time,
and then we went back to Seattle, which
And
was a
that's where your
better.
parents lived for their life then?
Uh-huh, okay, yeah.
Okay, Carly? Were you born
I was born in Seattle,
there? Okay.
Swedish hospital. And that's where my firstborn was born also, and it's still there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We had a
Yes.
birthday.
That's right, so,
Our daughter was born.
I was born on November 24th, 1930, and my folks, you know, I'm sitting here reminiscing, I'm not sure how they met each other. My dad was in the First World War, and my mom was in Seattle with the bank, and that's where the story began for me as far as their relationship. They were married in 1920, and my mom originally came from the Dakotas, South Dakota. My dad was more, I'm trying to think of the Milwaukee area originally.
No, we're in South Dakota.
Bismarck, I think.
Oh, that's North Dakota.
Is that North Dakota or South Dakota?
That's South
That's
Dakota,
north.
that's North Dakota, Bismarck, yes.
Okay.
South Dakota.
But my mother was one of 8 children too. She was the youngest of 8.
Oh, really?
She had 4 brothers and 3 sisters. And her folks, my grandparents, were in the Seattle area, so I'm sure that's why they eventually, my mom and dad, when they married, my mom was with a Japanese bank, and they worked in a Japanese bank, and she used to say that her dad said, now we're talking a long time ago, though all that money is going back to Japan, and it's gonna come back in bonds.
Really?
Yeah.
That was before.
Between the, after the First World War, but before, of course, before, it would have been 1925 probably or something. So they were, you know, they had a depth of understanding and seeing what was going on. But my brother and I were both born in Seattle. My brother's 4.5 years older than I, still living. And I was thinking of when you talked about Pearl Harbor, that he was in the Scouts, and we as a family with Scouts were out at Ballard ice skating at the Ballard Ice Rink on December 6th, the night of December 6th. And so when I came downstairs in the morning of December 7th, there was such a heaviness. I was only about 10, I just turned 11, that I knew something was very, very wrong. My mom and dad were sitting at the kitchen table with the radio on, and of course then I was filled in on what was going on, but it was a very, very, you know, just an ominous feeling. It was the first time I'd ever had that feeling of the air, in the air, just despair. My mom had lost a brother in the First World War, and then of course Dad was in the First World War, so there's a little different feeling when you've participated in it beforehand. So my brother went in the service but he was only in a couple, 3 years too, but in the Navy. And in 1942, because of the war, in 1942, we were living up on Capitol Hill, very close to Volunteer Park, and but we were renting the home, and the people, because of the war, wanted to sell the home. And my mom and dad didn't feel that they wanted to buy the home that we were renting, so we either had to make a decision to buy it or to make a change. And at that time, when they made the decision they didn't want to buy it, they decided they would pool the resources that they did have and build a house over on the property that they bought in Kirkland. Because years before, they had bought a lot on Lake Washington and Yarrow Bay.
That was Houghton at the time.
Houghton, yeah. 50-foot lot for $500.
Oh, wow.
And then Mother wrote to the owner of the lot next to it, 75-foot lot, and they were in California, and offered them the same amount if they'd be willing to sell, and they were. So they had 125 feet. Lake Washington, isn't that amazing? For
Yeah.
$1,250.
That's amazing. Oh, boy.
But that's where we moved in 1942.
Now, where is that property?
Where is it now? Well, the address is 4511 Lake Washington Boulevard Northeast. And when my parents passed, each one they stayed in their home. And then we kept the home for a while, thinking maybe we would split it. I between my brother and I.
It's just right on the other side of the
Carolina.
shipyard.
Yeah, just south.
Carolina.
South
Just
of
south.
Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where I grew up. Well, I was almost 11 when we moved there, yeah. But it was 1942 when we moved there, and it was a very eventful, simple lifestyle. I went to school in Lake Washington, they called it Kirkland High School. And I graduated in 1948 at 17 years old too. But we didn't have activity buses. And of course, you remember where the old school was here. And so if you wanted to stay after school for activities, you had to find your own way home. There were no activity buses. So I was telling Dorothy today, I remember leaving the school here because we'd always had after-school activity and walking home. And it was about a 3-mile walk. It was very flat, and there were sidewalks, you know.
It would be dark, I suppose, at sometimes.
I don't think so really, but you didn't think anything about it. It was safe. You know, it was safe then.
Yeah.
But I think of all these, we live down now close to Newport High School, and we can look out and see all these activity buses going. They don't just take them home, you know, they're taking them everywhere, home after school, after activities, so times have changed. And so I met Milt. Met Milt, but I worked at the telephone company between my junior and senior year, and then I just went 1 year to Central Washington College, and that was a teacher's normal, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt that I just had not a direction as far as education, so I came home and went to work for the telephone company. I'd been an operator at the Kirkland one, but I went in and applied at the Bell Telephone in Seattle and was hired to be a service rep. So I had my own desk and talked to customers and
That's kind of nice.
it was interesting. It was a very nice job. It was strictly telephone work, but you had your own desk and your own customers that you had to follow up on if they weren't paying their bills and things. And so,
Oh, really? Huh.
and that was about the same time we met. We met in the summer of 50, August of 50, and just started seeing really each other regularly. We were engaged in around Christmas and married in March 31st, 51. So we're going to celebrate our 56th. Congratulations. So I worked for a little while after we were married, same job, but we had a baby come along right away. So about 11 months after we were married, our firstborn Scott arrived. And you know, that was back kind of, unless you just had to go to work, mothers stayed home. And I mean, I probably wouldn't have had to, but that was just the way I was raised. And so we had kind of an extended family. Our oldest one is 55 now. But then we have four boys and 1 girl. She's right in the middle. But it goes right down to our very youngest one, which was a bonus, the caboose. I thought we had do you have one of those?
It was a caboose.
Were you? Well, we have one of those, and he's 39. So there's 50.
So am I.
There's 15 years between our oldest and our youngest. But what about you? I have to ask.
18.
Between your oldest and your.
This isn't our history, but his other brother, that's the nearest age, was 14 when he was born.
Oh, God.
I'm glad he's here. I'm glad.
Well, you know, but there it was. I just decided I'd be staying home again. I was looking at maybe a little freedom, you know, after raising 4,
Oh, well.
and then to have 5, the 5th come along 6 years later. But he's a neat boy. I can't imagine the family without him. Now, in fact, he's in Italy right now with Boeing. They're kind of, well, we have kids at kind of different places. The world is really small.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Getting
just so
smaller
small.
all the
So,
time.
anyway.
Thanks to Bowie.
Tell them how many grandchildren you
We have 18 grandchildren.
That's something.
And that's a bunch. So when we get together, 2 of them are married now, so when we do get together, we have a family gathering on the Saturday or Sunday between Christmas and New Year's. So the whole family can come and it doesn't interfere with other Christmas sides on the other side of the family. It works really well. And so there's 32 of us at least. But it's fun.
All of you are doing.
Yes. But they're wonderful.
I want to talk a couple of things to you. Since you're in that area of Houghton, do you remember any greenhouses there, or the Japanese front gardens, anything
I
like that?
remember walking down into where all the apartments are now down in there was a truck farm. They had truck farms at the very end. It was a very wet, marshy slough down there. I can remember rowing my rowboat and with my dog down into the marshes, and you could go in, and if the boat was light enough, you could go into the cat weeds and the cattails and everything, and see the ducks and the babies and all those things. It was I can't imagine they could have built what they built down there at the end of Yarrow Bay. But with piling and everything, I guess everything's possible. But I walked down with a brown paper bag and got a kitten from a family that lived way down in that area, and brought it home in a paper bag so it wouldn't know where it came from, you know?
Tell them about the greenhouses.
Which one?
Weren't there greenhouses down there?
You know, I don't remember greenhouses.
You don't remember greenhouses on Lake Washington?
There was a lot of, there were Japanese down in there that were,
I do not remember. I do not remember Japanese. Now Ray Lincoln and Claire, you know, Claire Sudan lived down in the bay farther down in than I, in a very marshy area. But I do not remember greenhouses. I can, oh gosh,
Another half hour.
No mistake about that one.
I'm glad it does that,
Yeah.
because then we
what
know.
was the name of that grocery store down
Oops. We are now on side 4. It is still March 11th, 2007, and we are with the Sessions family. And we're talking about possible greenhouses that might have been in the Houghton area.
I do not remember them.
there? But there were
Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
farmers in
Well,
that.
there were truck farms down there, because I remember going down there as a kid and picking string beans, you know. But more of it's just a fun thing to do, not that I had to do it. But I do not remember truck farms there at all.
What do you remember about,
greenhouses.
what about, oh, no, first of all, worked for the phone company
Yes.
in Kirkland. Tell us about that. What did you do? How did it operate?
Well, it's the old-fashioned
Yeah.
way, putting the thing in, saying number please, and putting it in where they were calling, a very old-fashioned switchboard. You just have to imagine the old movies or the movies that you see of that.
Was it old-fashioned then?
It wasn't old-fashioned then, I don't think, no. I think it was very up to date for a little town probably. But I worked at what they called a split shift. And so, you know, you'd work from morning till noon, and then maybe have a break, and then come back at 4 in the afternoon until 8 or something. So it just ruined the whole day, you know. But it was a job, and I enjoyed it. And it was easy to, telling some things on myself now, it would be easy to connect my mom and ring her sister in Portland without writing up a ticket or any of those things, you know, which I did not do. I really didn't do that very much. But you could throw a key and hear a conversation, local conversation. I didn't do that very much either. But there was the possibility, you know, it was not closed. Had a very nice supervisor, very nice woman, I'm trying to think of her name, that I think she probably was very patient with me. But
What was her name?
I can't remember. But,
So you were in the corner building,
mhm.
the old corner building.
And my dad usually would pick me up, you know, if I worked till 8 o'clock or whatever. He
What
would pick me.
kind of chair did you sit in?
That's the building.
What kind of chairs?
Mhm. Was it a low chair or was it a high stool?
Oh, I wouldn't have considered it a high chair.
A stool?
A
No,
stool?
it had a back, had to be comfortable.
Yeah, so it was a low, like a desk chair?
I think
Like
so.
what you're sitting in
Yeah.
today?
Maybe a
Only
little bit higher, but not
probably-
much, yeah.
And, let's see. So when a phone call came in,
You'd light, the board would light up and you'd plug into it and say, number please. And they'd give you the number and you'd say thank you, and you'd pick the cord up in front of it, which joined them, and test it to be sure that it wasn't busy somewhere else. You could hear a crackle if the line was busy.
you had headsets
Uh-huh,
on?
uh-huh.
Okay.
And you just plug it in and ring.
And then how would you know when they were done talking?
You know, you're just bringing back memories. The lights must have been on while they were there, and when they went off, you just unplugged it.
I think there was a sign from the
Huh?
lights. I used to do that too, and I think there is a sign from the
Yeah.
lights that the call is over.
Yeah. So,
But you didn't have to dial the numbers, all you did was,
yeah, it didn't have to dial a number.
So how would you ring that out? They had to be rung, so they would know they were getting a phone.
Well, you plugged it in and then you just
Yeah.
pushed the switch.
I have to think about that.
Is there anything to push?
There must have been just a key that you threw after you plugged it in. You know, you took the number, plugged it in, took the number, said thank you, and then put the other cord into the number they were calling, and then you must have thrown a key.
what if you got a number that wasn't on your thing?
I think we all had the same numbers. You know, there were only 2 or 3 operators at that time,
Uh-huh.
Kirkland.
When it was long distance, what would you, like this, yeah?
Oh, I wished you'd told me that you were gonna ask me these questions so I could have thought about them. It's been 60 years.
Bit of attitude here.
No, I really have to tell you, I can't remember. And you have to remember too, it was just a summer job. After school a little bit, but a summer job. And then see, I went to school over at Central. When I came back, I didn't come back to that job. So maybe I had all of 6 months
Yeah.
split.
And
Did
being
you
a
ever work
teenager.
with Martha Bird?
And being a teenager.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Which
And
meant, oh, whatever, you
How
know.
young?
That's exactly right. I
And
had-
being with Martha Bird, did you ever work with Martha Bird?
No.
Her younger sister was a friend of yours. so-
Yeah, but Mary, I don't think Mary never worked, to my knowledge, Mary never worked there. She could have, but never, my girlfriend was never there.
So you and Mary were friends?
Yeah, we were good friends.
You graduated together?
Graduated together. Pat Green of Green's Funeral Home also was my girlfriend.
And her maid of honor.
She,
Oh.
so we were good friends. And so I was in their funeral home.
What was that like?
It was very interesting. You know where that is.
Mhm.
Very attractive. In fact, Agnes Green had a shower for me before I got married. The lower level, the main level, was where all of the business was taken care of. And just a large living room would have been where you would be coming for your funerals, you know. They lived above it. They lived upstairs. And there was fragrance always of flowers. When you would come in, you know, there was fragrance in the funeral home.
I should tell them about our flowers.
But the kids had to learn how to be quiet, you know, when there was a funeral going on. And Chet and Agnes Green were a neat couple. And,
That was the owners?
pardon?
That was the owners
Well,
of Green?
Yeah, Chet.
Chet Green was the father. Chet Green was
He
the
was a
dad.
mortician for
Agnes
years.
Green, his wife, and then Pat, and then there were Conrad and Mike Green, actually, I think, took over the funeral home.
So there's
They're out of
Mike, Conrad, Pat,
Pat's the sister, the girl,
Yeah,
yes.
it's just-
And there was one other brother, but I can't remember his name.
They had an office down by the Belgian Mall, too, by the square.
But interesting experiences, and we were good friends, so.
And was it fun to go there? Was it creepy to go there?
You know, I didn't find it creepy, but I didn't ever have anybody go, ooh. either. Finding out,
Well, I suppose now that we know, to tell on Martha, she used to listen once in a while, she's like, that'd be something interesting, she said. And she'll probably be sending you a bill for your mother's phone calls.
There you go.
Oh, they'll erase that, right? No, I don't ever.
No, that's kind of mail now. I'll use that to my advantage somehow. She needs, her house is sliding down the hill, she had a slide during that, so she's writing checks right and left, so she's gonna be wanting some money here.
Oh.
Okay, you mentioned the flowers for your wedding. Is there a story here?
They weren't wedding flowers, we were going together. And we had just started going together when we moved to Kirkland in 47. And Sesha's folks had the mortuary. And so whenever somebody was, what do I want to say? Cremated, I guess, they didn't get their flowers. I guess they could have had them, but they didn't bother. So of course Sesh brought those flowers home. We had beautiful flowers. And we had a date why he'd take the little rosebuds and have corsages made. So he was I was very impressed.
Isn't that funny? I love it. What year were you married? What year?
Married, 43. This was back in 37, 38,
Okay.
when we lived in that little house.
So you had a long courtship.
Oh yeah, well it was stormy.
Oh, tell us.
It wasn't continuous,
Tell
right,
us.
son?
No, funny.
That's it, that story I could tell, we're not gonna go any further. I shouldn't have asked so, acted so curious.
It was a long time to go together, yes.
Well, you guys got married right away, pretty much, and you're still married. And
We're
We're
you
still married.
evidently, you were a little hard to get used to, and so that you were still together.
Can't
You were-
imagine that.
How old were you when you got married? How old were you? You were young.
I was
Well,
21.
you got
He was 22, I was 21.
Okay, see,
Oh, you were young
he was
kids.
older, see, when he got married.
Oh,
He was
Yeah, I
26.
was almost 27.
oh.
Actually, I did look that up, I've been spying on you.
So, and she was only 19,
I was 20.
20.
This is from 1919, this is the database, the East Side Journal database. And I can't find them. I have taken pictures of microfilm that have about the Sessions grocery store when it would be robbed. And little things happen.
Huh.
And I couldn't find them,
Oh,
I
yeah.
lost them on the computer.
Oh.
I was so sad.
We understand that. We
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, and I don't think they're there. I think, we right, I just don't know. But anyway, I wanted to have these for you. And if I find them, we'll send them, you know. But anyway, it says, from the 1919, it says Sessions plate glass was certainly doomed.
Such as what?
Plate glass, Sessions plate glass was
That had to
certainly
be in
doomed.
the grocery store?
That had to be in the grocery
Oh.
store, so doesn't that make us wanna know? If I go to, when I go to the Bellevue Library, I will look this up and send it to you, cause it's gotta be fun history
Oh,
here.
yeah, never
And
heard
then
of it.
music at Sessions store.
Music.
And again, in 1919, this was a happening place.
Yeah.
It's all before you were born.
Yeah.
Sessions to put up building at cost of $18,000. That was in 1923. Now, that little grocery store, was it that?
That's the only one I know we have here.
So, $18,000.
That sounds like
It
a lot
would-
of
Yeah,
money.
it
Yeah,
does.
it sure does.
Yeah.
But then it might be, see, it might not be, it might be a funeral home because it says Sessions New Parlors nearing completion.
Oh,
Yeah.
Same thing, so
yeah,
this is
that would
23.
be more,
So that would
Yeah,
dictate that
yeah,
building
Yeah.
that we're trying to save now.
Yeah.
It's from 1923.
yeah.
It's gonna cost more than $1,800.
Yeah.
$1,000 to save it.
Gosh.
Sessions buys wares interest in battery shop.
Well, that'd
That'd
probably
probably
be
be
Lawrence.
That was Lawrence. That was your uncle.
Yes, right.
Noted leaders of the, oh no, that's gonna be something else. Sessions displays. This is $1 billion Goodyear tire at tire shop. We got a tire shop.
That would have to be Lawrence again.
And this has a 1 with 9 zeros after it.
That doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Well, it might have been, that was the number that came off the Goodyear, you know, it had to have been. Again, this is just the titles, this is just the headlines. You
Yeah.
have to go to the Bellevue Library.
Was
look at
that
the
a
microfilm.
dollars or, was that a dollar?
No, a 1 with 9 zeros, so I have a feeling that that was, that many rolled off, I don't know, we'll have to read it. We have to
I
go,
can't
this is
believe that.
1927,
No, no.
this is 1927, so that had to have been Lawrence again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gotta be a mistake.
Session gives Kirkland modern funeral coach, well, we know that was Grandpa.
Mhm.
E.L. Sessions,
Elmer.
Yeah.
Elmer, that's Elmer,
Yeah,
and who is he?
Elmer was grandpa.
That's our
Oh,
grandpa.
that's Elmer, that's Grandpa. Elmer Sessions raises raspberries in November.
Raises what?
Raspberries in November. B.L.
Oh.
Session raises raspberries in November.
That'd be more like
Daddy.
Manly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how
This
they
is
raise
1930
raspberries?
and it is E.L. I don't know, he must have.
Yeah.
And then Sessions funeral. Oh gosh, and it says slamming another funeral home on must read. This must be something fun. They're taking a poke, he's taking a poke at somebody. What, it's an ad,
What year was that, Francis?
1931,
Well, there was a real competition for funeral homes that was going on. in town.
1931.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
Do you
Oh.
want a copy of that when you get it?
Yeah, please.
Rebels.
Wasn't there a Clark's funeral home?
Well, yes.
They were the same for a while. Sessions Street, and it used to be called Sessions, Clark's, and then it was called.
Lawrence sold it to Clark.
And who?
Lawrence
Okay,
sold
Lawrence.
it to Clark.
Okay.
And Sessions was first, and then I think Greens came in,
Oh.
and then Clark bought Sessions.
Oh, so it was 3 funeral home, has been under 3 directions?
No, just two,
Just
Just
2.
two, 'cause
Sessions and Clark.
Yeah.
Green never had anything to do with,
he was always his own.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
but so, okay, so Greens was where Greens is, but then there was Sessions, and Sessions was sold to Clark.
right.
Did you know that? I never heard that.
In the ads, it says Sessions funeral, and then they'll say
Yeah.
Sessions Clark for.
That's the way I remember.
And then it says Sessions, then it says Clark, formerly Sessions, and then
Oh,
eventually it'll say Clark. You
right.
know, there was a phase as the
Sure.
advertisement, just so people wouldn't be confused, they didn't
Yeah.
know where it was, because nobody used addresses
Lawrence
back
must have needed some money.
Yeah. Didn't he always?
then. Okay, this Lawrence, is he, too bad he's not around anymore. Oh, and it has E.L. Sessions obituary, that was it, when did you say he died?
Who?
Yeah, Grandpa.
Grandpa.
She doesn't
Oh,
know.
I
Oh, I
don't
thought
know
you,
Grandpa.
because you were coming up with
He was
it.
gone.
1936 is when he passed away. But then it says, once is enough, says Lawrence Sessions, so take shot at thieves. This is
Shots
19.
at what?
Thieves.
At thieves.
And thieves.
This was in
He was shooting at
1937.
the
He was shooting at thieves.
Oh, at the funeral home.
1937.
Did you remember that?
Oh, we've got to go to the library.
Oh,
This sounds fun.
Yeah,
Funny.
yeah.
Okay, Sessions and Ewing win Alaska trips.
Oh, that's Greta.
Greta.
Greta won the trip to
yeah.
Alaska.
Oh,
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a,
A
The
beauty.
the store sold, you could bid for, you
Yeah.
could vote for who you thought should
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Well,
And
did
she won.
yeah.
Yeah.
She
Well,
worked
that was
hard
a
doing
beauty
it.
contest.
I
wasn't
thought
it?
it was sort of a beauty contest, but because she was beautiful, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Oh, she was,
Yeah.
but I didn't think that was beauty.
Well, I don't know what
Yeah.
it was.
Well, we'll look it up, he'll tell us how she went.
Yeah.
Then there was, Manly Sessions was an obituary, and then Julia Sessions, who is she?
Julie was Elmer's wife.
So that's grandma,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and that was, she died 5 years later.
Oh, she was still alive, when I came onto the scene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't get, your maiden name was Westcott?
Yes.
My maiden name was Westcott.
What was your maiden name?
Conahan.
Conahan. Okay. Westcott, I've got that here, Milton Sessions. Corelli Westcott engagements, 3/15/51.
Where'd you get those things, out of the paper?
There is a database on the website,
Oh.
and it has, Alan Stein went through all the front pages of all the side journals, and just did Kirkland, and did the headlines,
Wow.
and I think there's 60,000 listings.
Oh,
And so, it's there, and so,
Oh.
I wanna know something about it. Because I still have to trot off to the library to get it.
Oh, great.
And then we take the digital camera, and I take pictures of the screen.
Interesting.
Oh.
Really
Amazing.
good
Oh,
pictures, I mean,
neat deal.
really getting good pictures, it's very time consuming.
Well, what do you do with all this information?
We lose it.
Oh, obviously I lose some of it.
We see evidence up there. Martha Burr.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah, you can poke around in her history. We've got movies. Did you folks ever take movies?
no.
Well, not,
Do you have them?
Oh, you're talking about Kirkland, though. Those
Oh,
are-
yeah.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
no,
Parade pictures, anything like that?
no.
I mean, we're always, I'm always shaking at him. We got, this is just going to be for the session side, but here, if I can see this. Manly Sessions,
Mhm.
Quarterly.
These are
quarterly,
These
this
are
is the census records from 1930. And how do you say it? Greta?
Greta.
Greta.
Greta
Greta.
and Sterling
Mhm.
and Gerard
Right.
and Milton
And Rita.
and Rita. And how is Rita?
No, she died
and young.
Yes, she died from
Smoke.
strangely smoking.
She was only in her 40s.
Yeah, she
Oh,
had
yeah.
lung
Just
cancer.
40.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, she's 3.5, and then you're 5, and you're 9.